Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to look at the latest on Storm Babet. I didn't think we were going to be seeing a named storm this week, as originally this was looking like we're just going to see some heavy rain, but it really has ramped up in the last few runs, and as we saw in yesterday's video, some intense rainfall is looking likely, and that's why we saw a yellow warning issued yesterday preemptively, and now we've got more warnings issued for much of the second half of this week, and there could be some extremely wild conditions coming up over the next 5 to 7 days or so. So we'll look at the latest from the live radar, we'll run through the weather warnings for Storm Babet, we'll have a look at the latest UKV, looking at where the strongest winds will be, as there are likely to be some fairly gusty winds, some heavy rainfall around as well, and then we'll have a look at some of the longer range, which does take us more into the weekend. As we head towards the weekend, things could get even more interesting, as we do see that Scandinavian high trying to take over, and from some of these latest runs it does show some cold Arctic air getting mixed up with the weather fronts of Storm Babet, or it's the remnants of Storm Babet, and some of the runs today are even showing some heavy snowfall across parts of northern Europe that could even just about drift towards the south, east or east. Again, very unlikely, but we are seeing it on some of these runs, and regardless of what happens, it's looking cold and very windy with very strong easterly winds into the weekend as we see that Scandinavian high take over a bit more. Now, I know that sounds like a lot is going on in the next week or so, and there is, so we'll try and cover it in as much detail as possible and try to make it all make sense. We've got lots of warnings and lots of potential impacts coming up over the next week or so. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, we're sort of in the lull before the storm, things looking pretty pleasant out there. Been a pretty cold day, feeling very chilly, and frost in the morning. Could be another frost tonight in some areas, but cloud has built in, so may hold those temperatures up in places. But you see, just to the southwest of England, towards the south of the Republic of Ireland, you can see a bit of rain moving in. It's pretty much just off radar, but if we do actually do the forward radar a little bit, you'll be able to see that this is the initial weather bands associated with Storm Babet, which is out towards the west of Portugal at the moment. Now, we'll be heading northwards over the coming hours, and these initial outer bands will give some heavier rain for Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, into Scotland through Tuesday to Wednesday, and then we start to see the widespread heavy rain and wind arrive Wednesday through towards Friday. So we'll have a look at that in a lot of detail in a minute. But if we do start by going over and have a look at the temperatures at the moment, you can see it's relatively cold, especially in the north. We've got those clearer skies. But further southwards, we are seeing slightly milder conditions, but still cold, low teens at best. Now, if we do have a look at these latest weather warnings, you can see we've got warnings issued from Wednesday all the way through to Saturday. Now, this is the first weather warning that's issued for much of southern Wales, northern and eastern England, starting at 9 p.m. on Wednesday until 6 a.m. on Saturday, covering many days, and this is for heavy rainfall. Storm Babet will bring a period of very wet weather to parts of East England, southern Scotland and the Pennines later this week. If you have a look at the further details, it's high impact, low likelihood. Widely 20 to 40 millimetres is likely to fall, and as much as 70 to 100 millimetres across Scotland. Rain may be accompanied by very strong southeasterly winds, which could exacerbate impacts. Now, again, I'm not looking at every warning in that much detail, as there are lots of warnings issued. If you are interested in reading all the data from this and see exact areas impacted, do check out the Met Office website. Now, if we do have a look at the other warning issued at this stage, which is for Northern Ireland, it's from 6 a.m. on Wednesday for that initial outer bands until 12 p.m. on Thursday. Again, prolonged heavy rainfall to Northern Ireland from early Wednesday in towards Thursday there. Again, 30 to 50 millimetres likely to fall, maybe in excess of 100 millimetres, and again, could be some strong southeasterly winds. Very high impact, low likelihood. So could see an amber warning issued for this perhaps tomorrow, as the likelihood could be assessed to have increased. Now, as we head into Thursday, we've got those 2 warnings still issued, but warnings now come into force across parts of Scotland. Now, initially, we've got this wind warning that's issued from 6 a.m. until 12 p.m. on Friday for very strong winds. Again, nothing compared to a traditional autumnal storm where we're looking at 70, 80 miles per hour. Here we're looking at 40 to 50, 60 to 70. So the winds by themselves probably wouldn't have warranted a named storm here, but it's combined with the extremely heavy rainfall, those impacts together, making this name. That's why it's come a little bit unexpected, because we weren't sort of looking out for a real severe windstorm. This is more of a full package of strong winds but very heavy rain. High likelihood, but lower end of the impact matrix, and that's reflected in those wind gusts being strong, but nothing out of the ordinary. 60 to 70 miles per hour as high as we're looking, is looking likely. And then we've got this rain warning issued for parts of eastern Scotland. This really is the bullseye area, perhaps, for that heavy rain, and this is where we could see an amber warning issued. Storm Babet will bring potentially exceptionally wet conditions across parts of central and east England. And this was the warning that was issued yesterday, and we can see 70 to 100 millimetres likely to fall, and maybe 150 to 200 metres again. Very high impact, low likelihood. Again, watch out the number of very high impacts we're seeing here. All very low likelihood at this stage because it is a number of days away, but all of these warnings that have got very high likelihoods are all very close to being amber, so could see some big upgrades in the coming days. Got another yellow warning issued from 6 a.m. on Thursday till 6 a.m. on Friday. Again, 70 millimetres is looking likely. Again, could see some strong winds of 60 miles per hour or so. High impact, low likelihood. And then as we head into Thursday, same warnings issued here. Again, still got this wind warning issued all the way through to Friday. Then to Saturday, still got this rain warning across eastern Scotland, and we still have that rain warning across much of England as well. So lots of warnings issued spanning some of these 4 days. So it could be some very severe impacts, not only in a short period of time, but over a prolonged period of time. And as I said, these warnings have all been, or most of them have been issued today, or at least updated today. I'm sure they'll be updated once again tomorrow, so do check them out. And there is quite a high chance we see at least one, maybe more amber warning issues within this, because those the severity of these impacts could be very high. Just at this stage, the likelihood is low. That's why they're all yellow at the moment. But as I said, upgrades are looking very possible, and some would even argue quite likely at this stage. Now, if you go over to the UKV and have a look at what that is showing over the next 5 days or so, have a look at Storm Babet in detail. Now, you can see over the course of today, not much going on, a bit of cloud around. That rainfall is starting to nudge into the southwest tonight into tomorrow, but really by lunchtime tomorrow, it starts to impact southwest England and the Republic of Ireland. Now, it will move in, giving heavy rainfall at times, and really for the United Kingdom, it will be giving heavy rainfall for Northern Ireland, and that's why we've got a weather warning issued there for Northern Ireland into Wednesday. And then we see the main weather fronts associated with Storm Babet arriving through the early hours of Wednesday, giving significant rainfall, those darker oranges and reds appearing, very intense rainfall. So Wednesday is looking like a washout for many, especially the afternoon. As it heads northwards, giving more rainfall, and this is where we start to see the persistent rainfall for eastern Scotland. Now, watch this area of Scotland where we got that yellow warning issued and where we saw that warning issued yesterday, and it says it's been updated today. The rainfall is pretty much persistent there through much of Thursday into Friday. See, it doesn't stop, and this is because those southeasterly winds were getting relief rainfall, lots of moisture getting pushed up onto the hills, and it basically gives a constant stream of rain. And you can see around the remnants of Storm Babet, loads of areas of heavy rainfall, and you can see eventually the winds start to veer more in from the east. And look at this break in the cloud to the northeast. That is the cold, very cold air arriving from Scandinavia. As I said, some runs even have this mixing across northern France, maybe just nudging into the southeast of England, giving perhaps some snow through Saturday and Sunday. But lots of rainfall, lots of areas of rain. Very difficult to pinpoint individual weather fronts and individual systems. But if you're going outside in the next 5 days, or probably from Wednesday onwards, it's quite likely that rainfall is either falling or it's on its way. Now you can see the upper air temperatures are fairly mild, and that's fueling the system. But look what happens as we head into Friday and Saturday. Look at all that cold air drifting in from the east. Again, we'll start to turn those showers wintry over Scotland, and could it be frost elsewhere? And as I said, there even is the risk of some snow further eastwards as well. Very low chance, but the risk exists. If you do look at the max temperatures today, pretty miserable, low teens at best. Next couple of days, temperatures will be up because the upper air temperatures are rising, but it will probably still feel pretty miserable. Early hours of Tuesday could be another frost in places, and again, Tuesday afternoon temperatures rising more towards the 14-15 degree mark in London as those upper air temperatures rise, and the same into Wednesday, could be again 15, 16, maybe a 17 degree. Into Thursday, even higher, 17 or 18 degrees is possible. And into Friday, again, could see a 16, 17. But we have to emphasise, under the rainfall, even if it is a bit muggy, a bit humid, it's going to feel pretty miserable as all of Storm Babet moves in. And then again, the remnants just spiralling around over the top of us. Now, as I said, it's mainly a rainfall event, but there are going to be some strong wind gusts as well that we should highlight. Nothing really big until we head into Wednesday, really, where we start to see gusts getting up towards 50, 60 miles per hour into the early hours of the morning there, especially for the Irish Sea. And then we see through the initial wave of Storm Babet, as it spreads northwards, we see 50, 60 miles per hour toward the coast, maybe 70 over the higher ground, and that's why the wind warning is mainly issued for Scotland. But we could see some very strong winds elsewhere as the remnants spiral in. Just look, pockets of very strong winds, like through the Irish Sea here, through the early hours of Saturday, appear as we see disturbances in the general flow. And then as we head towards the weekend, very strong easterly winds start to arrive, and that's where we could see 50, 60 mile per hour even along the east coast here as those easterly winds arrive, and you see the mean sea level pressure showing very strong flat easterly winds, cold air moving in. So yeah, Storm Babet moving in, remnants spiralling around, giving really unsettled conditions. And the reason why it's spiraling around is that Scandinavian high is building in, and eventually the Scandinavian high takes over and gives very strong easterly winds, turning it much colder and potentially giving some wintry hazards. If you do have a look at the latest GFS now, we can have a look at the more macro view of this. And again, you can see Storm Babet spiraling out to our southwest, moving in. Doesn't look like a traditional windstorm or named storm in the UK, but as I said, it's because of the combination of the rainfall and winds giving it the severe impacts. And you see the low pressure associated with Storm Babet and the general area doesn't really move. It kind of sits over the top of us, and then eventually into the weekend you see very strong easterly winds arriving. Now luckily the easterly winds only last a couple of days, getting cut off probably by Monday, and then eventually we go unsettled and westerly once again. But if we continue to look at the flow, look at that, lots of pockets of blocking and cut off lows, so the flow is looking very disturbed over the coming weeks, meaning the possibility of more named storms, possibility of more of these very big contrasts and rainfall events is looking very possible. Now, if you look at the upper air temperatures, you can see milder areas shifting up from the south with Storm Babet initially, and eventually that cold air arrives for only a couple of days, but nevertheless will turn things much colder once again. And if we actually go over to the GFS precipitation charts, I do want to highlight what could happen through the weekend. Look what happens in the early hours of Sunday. Low pressure, or at least remnants of the low pressure associated with Storm Babet, pull way back into Europe, or at least an area of it pulls back into Europe with those easterly winds coming in. We start to see evaporative cooling combined with colder upper air temperatures, snow falling across parts of Belgium, Netherlands, into France, and again, it could even just about clip the southeast before it gets swept away by westerly winds. So a very cold period there for about 24 to 48 hours, and the GFS even showing the risk of some snowfall across northern and western Europe towards the middle of October. Pretty ridiculous, again emphasising the wild conditions that's coming up this week. If we do have a look at the latest GM, again, Storm Babet moving in, giving very unsettled conditions, and then that flat easterly coming in, very cold conditions through Saturday and Sunday. Again, the upper air temperatures are not ridiculous. It is the middle of October, we must remember, but it's going to feel cold. The temperature deviation is darker blues, indicating 6 to maybe as low as 10 degrees below average. Very cold, very unsettled conditions where eventually the westerly flow comes back in. We see more of a traditional Atlantic pattern, but it's going to be very unsettled, very wet and horrible. So it is looking likely that this is it really. We're heading into proper autumn now, and we're going to be seeing a lot of rainfall in the coming days. Also, if we have a look at the GM precipitation chart for the weekend, if we do go through Saturday, look at that once again, showing a very similar pattern of some snowfall across northern France, Belgium and the Netherlands. Some snow showers across Scotland, again not unusual with this easterly wind, but could just about clip the far southeast there. Again, not a forecast, just the risk. UKV, not really looking at it much at all, or the UK Met Office global run, which is kind of the slightly lower resolution but more extended run of the UKV. We don't have a look at it in our videos as we normally look at the UKV, but that run that does run out to day 7 doesn't really sniff at this at all. So really only these more low resolution models are showing it, which may emphasise that they are catching on to something that's not going to happen, and these precipitation charts are a bit off, which is very likely and very possible. But you cannot rule out the risk, and the fact that these are even showing on charts just shows you the ridiculous sort of conditions we're going to be seeing this next week or so. If we finish by looking at the ECMWF, again we do see Storm Babet arriving from the southwest, giving very unstable conditions for a number of days. That Scandinavian high builds in, and it does pull in easterly winds, but it doesn't really pull much of that cold air in. It stays more to our north and our east. Instead, it kind of sits the remnants of Storm Babet over the top of us, and that will keep more rainfall falling all the way to day 10. And the real way to look at this is look at the accumulated precipitation. We are seeing huge amounts of rainfall. Our region of the North Atlantic and of Europe seeing pretty much the most amount of widespread rainfall across this whole chart. Here, just showing you the ridiculous amounts of precipitation that is going to be falling, not only in those bullseye areas that are emphasised by the warnings, but even elsewhere, even to southern England, where we're not getting warnings issued at the moment. We're looking at potentially 50 to 100 millimetres of rain. And again, those bullseye areas, we've got warnings, we're looking at 100 to 200 or even more. Again, this will cause flooding. On top of the saturated ground already, especially in Scotland, could cause significant flooding. I guess there's a lot of this rain falling in only 48 to 72 hours. Pretty ridiculous conditions coming in with this named storm. If we finally finish by looking at the latest ensembles, just refresh this so you can see the latest GFS ensembles. Pretty confident in the next sort of 4 or 5 days, but as we get towards the weekend with that easterly wind arriving for a couple of days, there is a lot of uncertainty how cold those upper air temperatures will be. It's these extreme runs here that would bring the possibility of snow. About 90 to 95% have no chance, but it's that small proportion that we still do need to keep an eye on. But look at that, significant rainfall, even onto the longer term, looking horrible. And those upper air temperatures are average to below average, so it's going to feel cold and miserable. The 2 metre temperatures are not looking good, especially when that easterly wind starts blowing in for the weekend. We're looking at 9 to 12 degrees for the thermometer temperature. And remember, this weekend we've just had was around that same sort of temperatures, but it was a bit of a northwesterly wind, really only blowing strong further northwards. This is going to be a bitterly cold easterly wind, and it's going to make it feel probably more like 3 or 4 degrees. So it's going to be really cold for October this weekend, and beyond that, looking at low teens at best. And if you compare to the ECMWF, again, very similar. Less runs going for that colder easterly towards the weekend, but very similar. The longer range generally around average with lots of precipitation. And if we compare to Glasgow as well, even more precipitation, ridiculous amounts of precipitation. Again, not in any single 6-hour period, which is what one of these spikes represents, but over a good 3 days, we're just seeing constant rainfall of 5 to 10 millimetres in 6-hour periods. Again, all accumulated potentially 100 to 200 millimetres over the course of a few days. So we can see some real wild conditions coming up with Storm Babet. Again, not all the weather warnings are not settled. They are going to change. They are likely to be moved, updated, and most likely upgraded. So do make sure you keep an eye on the weather warnings. And of course, I'll get another update out tomorrow, looking at the latest of this system and of course the wild conditions associated with it, and the easterly winds and cold weather into the weekend as well. Lots to pack in, so do make sure you keep up to date with the weather warnings and of course with the videos. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.